All right, we're talking with Army veteran Trace Miller, founder of Konala, which is America's first healthy drive-through fast food franchise. So, Trace, thanks for being here today. Um, Usually, we start off. I'd ask you to take us back and tell us what you did in the Army. I do want to hear that, but maybe we should go back a little farther and talk about how you were born with a certain type of epilepsy that uh, probably wasn't supposed to be living past the age of 13.
Yeah. First, Joe, thanks for having me. Yeah, I was born with well, I guess I wasn't born with it, but I developed a case of epilepsy called Lennox-Gastaut epilepsy when I was about one and a half,
Hmm.
and I started having a lot of seizures. No doctors could treat me. It ended up getting more and more severe. By my third birthday, I had my first grand mal seizure. Those are the ones that can kill people. I had my first grand mal seizure on my third birthday, and I started getting rapidly worse. This type of epilepsy gave me over 100 seizures per day, and all the doctors in America had pretty much written me off as lost. They said that I was going to be too severely brain dead to ever learn how to read or write, and much less even hold a conversation. So I started getting worse and worse. They said I was going to die by the time I was 13 at the absolute latest. And my parents had continued going around just trying to find additional advice and just talking to different doctors, and there was the same consensus across all of the doctors in America. And my mom never gave up. She started talking to one of her friends. All of her friends were sending her videos, books, everything, research to see if there was anything that we could do. And one of them sent her a book from a doctor down in Mexico, Dr. Hulda Clark. And this was the first doctor that my mom called her and told her my story. And she said, "Do you think you can help him?" And the doctor said, "I think I can cure him." So obviously, you tell a parent of somebody that's got a kid that's not going to live till 13, they're going to be so brain dead that I had to wear a helmet everywhere. I had my seizures all the time, couldn't shower, couldn't do anything on my own. And then a doctor tells you there's hope. So we flew down to Mexico immediately, and the doctor gave me the ideas of what we were going to do. It was a couple of pieces of technology that she developed and a very strict diet and go off all medications. And this was against everything that our other doctors in America had recommended. We went back to the States and told them the plan, and they said he could die. You take him off all the meds, he could die. And it got worse and worse after I'd gone off the meds and until it started to get better. So it got a little bit worse before it got better. And but I started to improve using the combination of very strict nutrition and her technology. I started to improve, and I was completely seizure free since I've been since 7 years old now.
Wow, that's crazy. And so
Yeah,
eventually you went into the Army. Like, what was it like? Did you have to divulge all that to the Army? How was that a hard thing to get past being able to be approved to go in the Army?
they only asked for any medical history within the last 10 years, and I didn't enlist till I was 19.
Interesting.
So I never had to divulge any of that because technically I didn't have epilepsy anymore, which
Right.
isn't really a thing. Anyone that had the Lennox-Gastaut epilepsy, there I was the first to be completely cured of it. So it was interesting that they didn't ask anything outside the 10 years, and I within that history, I didn't have epilepsy. So according to the Army, I didn't have epilepsy, and luckily I didn't have any cases while I was in, and I haven't since I was 7.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, so tell us what you did when you were in the Army.
Yeah, so I went to college right out of high school for a semester. I didn't think that I wanted to go to college. I went to Montana State University, got a scholarship for ROTC there. So I thought I'd go, might as well. Just didn't want to live with any regrets. And I dropped out after one semester. I hated school still, loved the Army. So it was the next logical step for me to just drop out and enlist. So I did. I enlisted as a 14 Tango, as Patriot Missile operator. Was told that was the only thing that was available as a combat MOS at the time.
Hmm.
It was in 2012, the first part of 2012. And we weren't really uh, improving any of our combat MOSs at that time. So an older guy that was enlisted, not straight out of high school or something. That's what they said was the only thing available. So I took it. I just wanted combat and realized that Patriot Missiles isn't that much combat in 2012. So I tried to go special forces, went through selection. I broke my collarbone and got medically recycled. That was my ultimate goal, was to go to special forces. And while I was getting medically recycled, we got orders to deploy. I deployed to UAE for as a deployment, the one of those Air Force type deployments. But we deployed to UAE for 12 months, and it was a um, that was the time that I actually got in love with learning again and in love with business. So it was a key part of my life.
Yeah, so talk a little bit about that. Like what was it that triggered you on the business thing, and then how are you scratching that itch while you're still in the army?
Yeah, so I actually dropped out of high or out of college the first time because I really didn't like learning anymore. I just lost all my passion, hated school, only tried going to college just to not regret it, like I said, and that's why I joined the military instead. But something clicked on deployment. I don't know whether it was boredom or just the same monotony all the time, not really being exposed to different people, just my unit, that there's a combination of some people in my unit that pushed me to want to learn as well, but then just something that clicked as like a self-motivation, just wanting to improve. So I started reading a book a week, minimum, one or two books a week while deployed. I got incredibly physically fit, just fell in love with fitness in very specific nutrition. I was really fit for cardio and lifting. I just fell in love with self-improvement all over again. And something in there, I started with reading fiction books, then I started reading investment books, started reading stock investment books, and that was kind of the first thing that I made money in, was investing in stocks. Made a decent amount in that. And then I started realizing that you can control your returns on investment if you own the business yourself. In the stock market, you're trying to match the S&P 500, something like that, just to beat the economy. But then in business, you realize that you can control your returns. You open like in brick and mortar stores that I'm in, you open one store, then you make a certain amount of money. You can get 100% return by opening a second store, theoretically.
Hmm.
So when I realized that, there was one book, it was called Millionaire Fastlane, that got me to realize that. And once I made that click, then I only read investment or business books, and anything that was related to entrepreneurship. And I haven't read another book outside of entrepreneurship except for like mental strength, mental toughness type books.
Hmm.
But that's it. I have not gone back to a fiction book once, and I just am addicted to business and learning and just self-improvement as a whole.
Yeah, sound familiar. I was right there with you for a long time. All right, it's a good spot. Take a break. We'll be right back.
Cool.
All right, back time with Army veteran Trace Miller, founder of Konala. So, Trace, you fell in love with business and the concept of entrepreneurship while you're still in the Army, reading every book you can get your hands on. Got involved with stock trade and was making money at that. So, where did it go from there?
Yeah, so I started loving learning again and reading about business while I was in. Shortly after I got out, I moved back up to Idaho, went to college for a little while because I made the soccer team. So I went to school for a year again, just because I made the team. Dropped out again, and then went through firefighter academy, EMT school. Then I moved out to Hawaii as a scuba diving instructor. Then I went to college again in California for welding, dropped out a third time. And then that's when my wife and I had decided to go all in on business, and we bought our first food truck. So we bought a food truck in Portland, drove it up to Idaho, moved into my parents' basement, and parked an old red tool truck out in front of in my parents' driveway while we were living in their basement. They're traditional, old school parents. We had to live in separate bedrooms, and we had to hand sand, paint this thing, build out a food truck from complete scratch. And we opened that food truck in Coeur d'Alene about 6 years ago. And
Mm.
that was our first foray into business full time. It was always a means to an end to buy a bar. My wife was in the service industry since she was 15 years old. She worked at Chili's, at a Hard Rock Cafe, a couple breweries, bar out in Honolulu. She just loved the service industry, restaurants, so always wanted to own a bar. So we started the food truck as a means to an end to open a bar.
Mm.
And after about 5 months, perfect property came up for sale, and I always wanted to invest in real estate. So I sold all my stocks and rolled that over into real estate, and we bought the building that it ended up becoming the Bunker Bar. And that was where we parked the food truck out in front of it, built out the bar for our concept, and then we slowly started buying real estate surrounding it, expanding the bar 4 times, and adding on 1,000 square feet, 3,000 square foot patio, and just built this thing out huge. And we actually just sold it 3 months ago. We had that thing for almost 6 years. Absolutely loved it. It was a fun business, but it was not the business that we wanted to be in long term that fit our lifestyle. So it was during that time that I actually fell in love with the industry as well, with the service industry as well. Couple years in, realized that we're actually pretty good at this restaurant thing. We bought another lot that was bordering the bar, piece of property that we just didn't know what to do with, and we just went back to the drawing board to create something that we'd be completely passionate about. I had a business selling on Amazon while I was going through college one of the times. That was the first, I guess, true business other than stocks. Realized I wasn't that passionate about it, and I didn't want to have that same lack of passion in another business. And the bar was fun. My wife was very passionate about it, but we did burgers, fries, and alcohol. It didn't really fit our lifestyle of health and wellness. And we started just going back to the drawing board completely. Every business that does very well long term solves a problem. So we realized that there's a problem with inaccessible healthy food, and
Mhm.
that there's a problem with the obesity epidemic across the country. There's 74% of Americans are overweight and 42% are obese, according to the CDC this year. And I think a lot of that's because of traditional fast food. So if healthy food could be just as convenient and delicious as traditional fast food, then I think we really got something. So that's when we just really dove into creating a concept that solves all of those issues. And that brought us to Konala. So we um, bought that property, built it out, and then 2 weeks before opening, we had a kid. So we had our first child was born 2 weeks before opening the first Konala. I don't recommend having a baby 2 weeks before opening a restaurant. That is incredibly difficult. But we sold the bar shortly after that too, just because we realized that, I mean, we got it. First of all, it didn't fit our lifestyle, health and wellness, but then you have a 1 year old kid, can't even take your kid to work for another 20 years. Like it just doesn't fit at all for having a
Mhm.
brand new child. So that's when we got out of the bar, sold that just a few months ago. So I guess it was a year after we'd opened Konal that we waited to sell the bar and the food truck. And Konala, that's what brought us to Konala, and that's our future.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about Konala. Like how is it healthy? What kind of things are you guys selling?
Yeah, we serve protein bowls and salads, so it's picture like a Sonic or a Dutch Bros, but it's food. We do drive-through and walk-up only for our new construction concepts, and we'll do some conversions that we've done one, and we're working on more that are conversions of existing drive-through restaurants. So the drive-through is the key. We'll have drive-through at all of our stores, but we serve it in protein bowls and salads. You know, you just pick they're all high protein meals. That's our food philosophy at Konala, is that we just have a high protein meal with customizable carbs and fats. Everybody is, on average, people are protein deficient. Everybody needs high protein diet. That's not really up for contestation, but everybody has a different need for their fats and their carbs. So we wanted to focus on high protein meals and then allow for people to be able to do a keto diet, to do a high carb diet. Like myself, I do very well with high carbs and high protein and very low fat. Whereas a lot of people that do the keto, it'd be the literal opposite of that. But the only consistency is the high protein. So we have high protein meals served in the form of protein bowls and salads. And then we recently just added chicken tenders to the menu. Our whole menu is gluten free. So our chicken tenders are non-breaded, non-fried. They're just seasoned, air fried tenders, just like a grilled tender, pretty much.
Hmm.
So those are high protein as well. It's just chicken and a dipping sauce. And we started the first one. We opened, what was it, April 1st of 2023. And we opened the second store was just another 6 weeks ago. So it was about 16 weeks after opening the first store, we opened the second. And we just launched franchising with FranSmart. It's a franchise development company. They're going to help us sell and scale this thing. They grew concepts from inception, like Five Guys, Qdoba, Halal Guys, and many more others.
Mhm.
So they're going to help us take this thing across the country. But we started with just the one in Post Falls, Idaho, second one in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and we just sold our first multi-unit franchise deal of 5 stores in Spokane County. And we've already got the 3 stores picked out and in negotiation for the fourth and fifth right now.
Wow, that's awesome. Talk some of the business aspects of how you go about turning a restaurant idea into an actual marketable franchise.
Yeah, I mean, we had the benefit of starting with the food truck and the bar, so we made all the mistakes in the world. I mean, our first, we like you can never have too much refrigeration on a food truck. We started with a mini fridge. We could only serve like 40 burgers out of it. We're selling out in a couple hours. We had to, within days, we had to upgrade refrigeration. We had to completely change our entire layout of the truck, and it was just like we didn't even realize that there were food distributors. So we were buying all our food from the grocery store when we first started. We didn't even know all this stuff. We were 25, just turned 25, and we didn't know what we were doing. Didn't have any help, didn't have any mentors. So we made every mistake in the world. And it was just continue making mistakes, never have the ego to be scared to make mistakes, and then just to continue to learn from them. That was the key. And we just did that for 6 years. I made every mistake there is. We've got our employees call it the warehouse. We got a shop that's just full of failed equipment ideas of mine. We've tried out all sorts of equipment. We try out all sorts of improvements, and then that's the graveyard. We've got hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment that has just gone wrong. But that's how we learn. That's how we get to the point that we're at now of like we have a scalable concept that's it franchised, and this thing is going to be as simple to scale as any restaurant franchise there is. It's just created with simplicity in mind, and that's only because of the things we learned from the food truck, from the bar, and then just constantly looking to improve.
Hmm. So is this like similar to like Chipotle with without without the tortillas, or like how does it actually work? Like is your menu fairly simple, like I'm thinking of like Subway, when like Subway going through the drive-through with Subway gets really complicated because there's way too many toppings and stuff. It's not like McDonald's, but um, talk us through a little bit more detail with that. Like,
Yeah, you hit that right on the head. So Chipotle is kind of similar. Chipotle doesn't have a drive-through. They have Chipotle lanes, where you can order ahead and pick it up in the drive-through.
oh,
They don't have traditional drive-throughs where you order at the drive-through just because of that same complication with Subway.
yeah.
So that's called a walk the line system where you order from somebody and then you walk the line with them, just adding on your toppings.
Hmm.
And that's the problem with it. We could never do that in a drive-through format and be as fast to compete with these other drive-throughs. Our average wait time is under 3 minutes. It's because of the simplicity of our menu as well. So you just pick a bowl and pick your base. So that's how you customize your amount of carbs that you have for it. But our bowls have chef curated toppings, sauces, everything like that. So it already has its toppings. We have the macronutrients, calories, everything listed on the menu. We're very transparent about all of that. And you just pick your bowl, pick your base, 2-step process, and you can customize it from there. Pretty much you see anything on the menu, swap out a sauce, swap out a topping, add avocado, double protein, whatever you want. But that's the simplicity of it that allows us to be just as fast as traditional fast food. We don't have you don't have to pick all of your toppings. You start with a bowl and then you can modify it from there.
Hmm. So you go back to like when you first opened it, like when you first opened your first Konala location right next to the burger bunker. Um, within within how many weeks was it? Like 16 weeks or just a few weeks, right? You opened the second one?
Oh no, it was 16 months. So
I must have
yeah,
misunderstood. Okay.
yeah. So we wanted to
Still pretty
take
quick though. Like less than a year and a half, you open a second one, and it's not even technically a franchise yet, right?
right. Yeah, it was so the first year we wanted to just fine tune everything. We wanted to, just make all the mistakes, try all sorts of different things. We had 23 different menu iterations since we opened. We wanted to make all those changes and learn everything for this concept before we franchised it. We didn't want to have to make all these changes while there's someone that is a new franchisee. A lot of these new franchises, they make all the changes to their franchisees. I wanted to have a store that we just constantly test all the stuff, try everything so that once we are ready to franchise, then we aren't making a whole bunch of changes every month, every quarter to our
Mm.
franchisees. So we took that first year, we overhired, we have a great director of operations, awesome chefs in-house, just great support team that we just constantly tried to mess around with everything in there, the operations, the menu, everything to get to this point of simplicity that we're at now and scalability. It's just from making all of those mistakes intentionally for a year. We tested pretty much everything that we've gotten as suggestions from franchisees or potential franchisees so far. So we have an answer for a lot of that already. Of that's why this works, that's why this doesn't work, and we'll continue messing around with that first store. That's going to be kind of like our test store. But the other couple of stores that we had in Spokane, they were actually going to be corporate stores that we had under development, and we reassigned those to a franchisee once we signed him. He came by just as a customer. He's a celiac customer, and he was just fell in love with the concept from the first time he tried it. Lives in Spokane, 30 minutes away, and he still drives every single day to come get the food. Uh, so we reassigned those couple of stores to him. He'll have his first store open probably in early January. So he's gonna have his first store open 3 months after he signed, just
Yeah,
because he had that in development.
that's awesome. So if somebody was interested in a Konala franchise, uh, are you able to set? I know the rules and regulations with franchises are really strict, but like what can you tell us cost wise? Like what's a estimated cost to get in a Konala franchise?
Yeah, so we're updating our FDD. They should actually get updated today, but we have our current costs listed are 382,000 to 799,000 is the initial investment range. That's gonna be for a conversion, a build to suit. Those are gonna be like on the lower end there. Conversion of an existing drive-through will be the middle to high end range, but that's all in, all costs to open. The only sales I could talk about right now, that's also very highly regulated. Our
Yeah,
first 12 months sales, we did 1.25 million, just over 1.25 million out of that first store in Post Falls. Is a poor location, and that was only 6 days a week open with short hours. So since then, we went to 7 days a week, extended our hours by a couple hours a day, and it is more than that. But and that those numbers should be coming out this week. But those are the ones I could talk about right now. One of the big things that differentiate this concept from others is our low cost of staffing. So this was created to be able to for simplicity, but an enjoyable work environment for the staff. So we have very low turnover. We're less than a quarter of the industry average turnover, which is a very expensive cost for most restaurants. But we have low cost of staffing. Our first year, we averaged just under 20% cost of labor, where the industry average is about 30%. So we're able to overpay our people. We're able to keep them longer, and it's just a more enjoyable work environment.
wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So if somebody's interested in checking out a Konala franchise, where would they go?
They can go to konalafranchise.com or fransmart.com. It's listed on both. Go to konala.com, see our corporate website, and there's a franchise tab. You just click that to take you over to the franchise info as well.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we are getting close to the end of our time, Trace. So if you were talking to yourself several years ago, right before you got out of the army, and talking to somebody that's interested in getting into business and entrepreneurship on their way out of the military, What kind of advice comes to mind?
I knew nothing back then. I wish that I knew how little I knew. Everyone always says that looking back, but just realize that you don't know anything at all. So you just have to try things and learn. So one of my favorite sayings is, with the courage to begin and the discipline to endure, success is a matter of time. So I would say that's the most applicable to my mindset looking back. Just don't be scared to start. Just make all the mistakes in the world. Start making mistakes as early and often as possible, and just keep your ego out of the way so that you can continue to learn from them. And then most importantly is don't quit. The one that wins is the one that stays in the game the longest.
Sage advice. Awesome. All right, Trace. Well, thanks for sharing your veteran entrepreneurship success story, and look forward to seeing your future success. Maybe we'll have you back on here in a couple of years when you're a big franchise mogul.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks for having me, Joe.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, Trace. These two veterans are Oscar Mike.